Hey guys, and welcome to the BlizzCon recap. We're going to talk about the gameplay update changes for 2019 that were announced at BlizzCon. I'm going to go through them first just to explain what's going on and going to happen for the next year. And then I want to give you a little bit of my opinion and also look back at 2018, the changes that they implemented then, and to see what the direction of the game is. So let's start and just get ahead in. From this picture, you don't see that much. On the left side, you see the boosts. That's not going to be very interesting. It's not gameplay related. The middle is the important thing, catapult changes, XP changes, and then on the right side you see a little bit of quality of life in my opinion, which is just armor changes, how they're displaying armor in the game and how it works. This also is not going to be a very big topic for me because it's, again, I think it's a quality of life thing, just making things clearer, but we're going to get into it a little bit. I'm going to explain at least how it's going to work in the future. So, experience, new experience. So the premise of these gameplay changes that are shown here is basically that Blizzard wants to make games better by reducing the snowball effect on the matches. Snowball, if you don't know what that means, is basically that one team will win the first objective, for example. Let's say we're going to go on Infernal Shrines. So the first team will win, or the blue team will win the first Punisher. And then with this Punisher, they just snowball the game, meaning that they win, for example, the team fight after the Punisher. They get a full team wipe. They take out the full front wall of the mid lane, and they also take out on the fort. So suddenly then the red team is, or the blue team is ahead 3 levels or 2 levels, and they can just always be ahead of the enemy team in XP, meaning that they will be first level 10 versus level 8, for example. And then when the enemy team is going to go level 10, they already have level 13 on the blue team side. So this means that at no point the enemy team, the red team, has the ability to fight on the same talent tier. And I hope I didn't mix up the colors, but anyway, I hope you get what I'm saying. So basically one team always has a talent advantage over the other team, and therefore it's very difficult to fight into this. We see this a lot in pro play as well, because the pro teams are so good at keeping their advantage, but it also happens in Hero League and Quick Match, where you just like have no chance to it. Heavy snowballs, I talked about this in another video, how to prevent them and how they actually happen. So if you want to look into that, there is a video about snowballing in the library of my account. So Blizzard wants to change the approach of the game in terms of these snowballs. There were some changes in 2018 that should help with that, but now they're gonna go and do more. So the structure adjustment is the most important one, and the one that is, I think, also very controversial, because they're gonna remove all experience from destroying forts or keeps. So the big buildings in the lane are not giving any experience anymore. They also decrease the experience from towers by 50%, so you only get half of the XP that you get now. But to basically not slow down the game, so that the game time doesn't go up exponentially, they are increasing the passive experience. And if you didn't know that, that's something that happens. So basically when you just sit around and do nothing, you still get experience without killing minions or anything else. You just get passive experience, and that is increased by 15%. And the experience that you gain from defending or defeating mercenaries is increased by 100%. I think they also said, I'm not quite sure if this is 100% complete. I think, like, I just rewatched the BlizzCon panel, and I think that also that they said that taking mercenaries was increased by 100% XP, but I'm not 100% certain on that. It also doesn't clarify here, and that's something that is important to note, that there are mercenary camps that don't give XP. For example, the siege camp on Volskaya, the 3 little turret things, they don't give XP when you take the camp. So I don't know if every camp will get to that point where they just have XP or give XP when you take them, but at the moment some camps don't give you XP when you take them. Defeating laning mercenaries will now grant 100% of defending mercenaries experience. So basically, if you... Oh yeah, sorry, I actually read this wrong. So defeating defending mercenaries, that's why I stumbled upon this. So defending mercenaries are basically the mercenary camps, and then laning mercenaries are the mercenaries that are in the lane. So basically the ones that are taken. So yeah. This is a change that means that if you defend, for example, a siege camp, the ogres on Cursed Hollow, when the enemy has taken it, and you stay in lane and take the responsibility to defend them, you also get XP for your team. That also means, though, that if you are not defending them with a hero, they just die into a wall, into your minions, they're not giving you any XP. They work exactly like minions. They also want to change catapults. So basically, they know that removing the XP from forts and keeps means that forts and keeps are not as important as an objective. Meaning, for example, if you wanted to look at Battlefield of Eternity, for example, you have a 100% shield immortal, you would just, and that goes bottom, you can just go top and soak XP instead of trying to teamfight bottom with the immortal, because there's not much to gain from you if the structures don't give you XP, right? So it's safer to just go to another lane, take XP there, or on bigger maps, let's say on Cursed Hollow, it's still more important to get all the minion waves if the enemy is cursed, rather than getting the buildings, because the buildings don't give you XP anymore, if, for example, you have taken all the front walls already. So because of that, they want to change the catapults and how they spawn. So whenever you destroy a fort, every third minion wave, so every 1.5 minutes, a catapult will spawn in that lane. So if you take top fort, every 130, there will be a catapult joining your minion wave in that lane. That means that there's always pressure coming from one lane, but it's not as immediate as with the keeps. So if you ever have played against a very early keep down, for example, on Battlefield of Eternity, it's sometimes very pressuring to have that lane always being pushed by catapults, because you have to defend them, otherwise they just do core damage, because they wipe everything. They want to prevent having constant fear of 5, 6, 7 catapults in your lane, so they only spawn every third minion wave, which means there's still pressure, but it also means that they don't come into your lane every time a minion wave spawns and you have to defend it basically every 30 seconds, but you have time like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes or something like that before they actually reach your keep wall where they are dangerous. Before that, they'd obviously clear minions, but it's not the end of the world, because that's something that they also point out. Blizzard says, because the catapults will be still pushing the enemy lanes, it also enables, like in this example, for example here, the blue catapults attacking the red wall means the red team has a safer time to gather this XP, because they can just wait for these catapults to push the lanes out. So if you are behind, you can also just stay in behind the walls and then wait for this to come and gather the XP here. On top of that, the catapults also are going to scale, so they don't do full damage from the beginning on, which is the case right now, meaning that even if you have like 2 or 3 or 4 catapults going towards your keep wall, it's not going to be as devastating as it is in like 20-25 minute games where the catapults basically just kill everything. So there's basically an increase in the size of their attack area, meaning they don't do splash damage immediately. So it's like, I want to explain, like, the power of the catapult is that they take out minion waves, enemy minion waves, because they do splash damage. So they take out the melees first, and then they do kill the minion, the mage minion and the range minion by just having splash attacks. So with that being smaller, they don't take out the full melee wave immediately and everything. So it makes it easier to defend it. And again, obviously they also scale in attack range, damage, and health. That means attack range also very important. That means that at the beginning they, for example, might just be cleaned up by turrets when they hit the wall. So that's kind of cool. It also means that it still is valuable to get a fort, because it gives you spawning catapults. So that's kind of cool as well. So then we go over to the armor revamp. I'm going to give you my opinion on the changes here in a second. The armor revamp just looks like this. There's now a better understanding of what armor is happening. I actually have no idea which one is which. But this could be physical armor, this could be spell armor, or the other way around. Doesn't really matter. I think the picture is more telling. Yeah, so this is physical armor, and this is spell armor, because it has a little spell, like a little staff. So in this case means that this is spell armor and this is physical armor. So this is just to make it easier to read. A lot of heroes have passive armor, so from what I understand, this will be there as well. So for example, for Cassia, she will have that symbol up all the time, from what I understand, because you want to have that information present all the time. On top of that, there are just some limitations that are added to armors, which is now like the speed modifiers, movement speed modifiers. Basically, the highest or the lowest amount of armor is applied and then overridden. So let's say there's two abilities from Hero A and Hero B, and they both give armor to Hero C. And Hero A gives plus 25 armor or plus 25 spell armor, and Hero B gives plus 50% spell armor. Then the Hero B buff will be applied and overrides armor of Hero A. I do think, and this hasn't been asked or clarified, if you overlap them, they still tick in the background. So while you see the 50% armor on top of it, it doesn't remove the buff of the 25% armor. Because, for example, if you were to apply the 25% armor just like a millisecond before the 50% armor buff is timed out, it's falling off, you should still have the 25 armor after that. But it's not 100% clear because it's not explained exactly how that's going to work, and that might also be something that they're going to change in the future. Matchmaking improvements, I'm not going to talk about this a lot because I want to see the whole role system in place, and it also doesn't affect really Hero League. It's much more focused on quick match. But the rundown is basically that you always have a tank, a healer, and a range assassin in a group. So no matter what you queue as, you should always have a tank, a healer, and a range assassin in your team. So you could, for example, queue as Vala, and then you would have a tank, healer, and another range assassin on your team, or you could be the range assassin in this case. And they also want to incentivize having more tanks and healers because obviously these are the least played roles, and they're also the least represented in the hero pool. They're the most assassins are range assassins, or the most heroes are range assassins. So they want to encourage that by having like a little symbol pop up and say like, hey, if you queue up as a healer, you just get 50% more experience or something like that. This will happen at some point. They didn't exactly say what's going on with this, but it also means there should be a revamp for the UI, basically telling you that, for example, if you are a group of 2 people, you won't be able to queue up as 2 range assassins, from what I understand. You would have to queue, I guess, with 1 tank at least, or 1 healer, and then 1 range assassin, or 1 whatever you want to play. So we're going to see this in the future, probably explained a little bit further. And then again, the boost doesn't really concern anything, doesn't really make any changes. So now we're going over to my opinion on this, and I want to jump back on to the 2018 gameplay update. So if you can't remember or haven't been with us at that point, there was a lot of change towards the first battleground objective. It took longer for the objective to spawn. Basically now everything spawns at 3 minutes and is announced at 2.5 minutes on the battleground. This was changed for a lot of battlegrounds, and then the regeneration globes were changed so that they become neutral and then can be claimed by both teams. Structures, no ammunition for towers anymore. And then the walls can be attacked normally. That was an addition because people didn't want to have those walls to be destructed or not destructed. There was a lot of discussion about it, but anyway, the tower vision and the damage had been increased and reduced, and you also had no I think you had no, I can't remember that, you had no warm-up exactly, I think for the fire time. So basically whenever you walked into a tower range, it would just immediately attack you. And now it had the warm-up of 0.5 seconds. So basically you can dodge tower shot by just like walking into range and then walking out. So if you have a range hero like Raynor, he can dodge most of the attacks. He weaves in and out of things. And then they also removed standalone towers and stuff like that. And then lastly, minion base damage had been increased and there's no respawn anymore. And I want to go further into this. The mercenaries were changed and they were important, but I want to go over this to give you my opinion about the changes that are coming for 2019. So all of these changes here were meant, and I just rewatched the VOD from BlizzCon as well, to make sure that I understood correctly what the devs wanted to do. These were meant to make the early game more important and also have laning phases be more important. Meaning the solo lane, for example, is more impactful because you need to be in the solo lane to make a difference because there's more globes. So if you get more globes from your enemy team, for example, you are just stronger, you can bully people out of things. And the effect of that was, unfortunately, a little bit that actually the solo lane became less important. So if you listen to pro gamers, if you listen to high-level GM players, they think that the solo lane is basically just who stays safer, and you just stay in the wall, you tank the minions, the towers take the minions down, and then you just continue living your life. There's no reason really to attack the enemy offlaner as a solo laner because it's so dangerous to die, and the advantage you get from killing the offlaner is also very minimal because as the towers now have unlimited ammo, you basically have a harder time to just kill towers and even further go kill forts. I think that's something that just doesn't happen anymore. Like there's no solo lane anymore that just goes for actually killing things because again, without the ammo depleting, you basically just have constant pressure from towers and forts on you. So these changes made a lot of sense in terms of like how the game is played. There's early game that is important. The first 2.5 minutes, there's nothing on the map that is important other than the minions and the mercenary camp. So it educated the player base as well, saying like, hey, the first 2.5 minutes is you should focus on XP, you should focus on getting map pressure by getting mercenaries, and you should prepare for the first map objective. And I think from looking back to this, most of these changes made a lot of sense. Again, the solo lane situation is a little bit sad and it's not the greatest thing, but I don't think many people saw this coming for the solo lane from these changes. But again, this should have helped already with snowballing because you have more time in the early phase of the game to soak XP. Even if the enemy team gets a hero kill, you can still respawn and things happen at a set time, so you know when to be safe and when to be aggressive, basically. Going back into the experience changes that are coming for Heroes of the Storm now, I personally feel that this is going to be an issue on several stages of the game. And with that, I mean, there will be problems, I think, with this for Hero League and Quick Match, but more importantly, I think it will be pretty bad for esports. That being said, we haven't played these changes, so there's nothing that we know for sure. We don't know how this plays out. We don't know exactly how it will feel. And especially the passive XP gain might actually be enough to reward good play anyway. But I want to say that I do have my opinion right now, but this might change when I get to play this. So just bear that in mind. So what I don't like about the removal of the experience from fort and keeps is that these structures are now basically worthless on all 3 lane maps. So if we look back at 2017 and how Fnatic with Shrimpy, SMX, Wobby, Quacknix, and who do I forget? Mene. No, not Mene. Mene wasn't there. Forget somebody. But you know what I mean. The good team that won MSB over Dignitas in 2017. What they did on Infernal Shrines, I thought was clever. They would skip the first Punisher and just soak XP. And I think that's a good part of the strategy. You get XP from soaking the lanes, while the enemy team has to take care of the objective, or not has to, but they take care of the objective, get the first Punisher, and then try to get some XP from pushing with that Punisher. But Fnatic was so good in their rotations that they basically defended the Punisher without losing that much. Normally only a couple of towers maybe, sometimes even not that. So then at that point, you basically had no worries about fighting on the shrine, and you didn't need to worry about losing a team fight and then having a snowball happening after the first Punisher. The changes that are now happening on forts and keeps, I think will make this even more important. Like, why would you risk taking an objective when you just can soak experience on minions and taking mercenaries? Like, mercenaries will have more XP gain than the objective. So I feel like this devalues objectives a little bit, especially those that spawn something. And on top of that, I feel like defending these objectives will be basically not very important. Like if it takes a fort and there's catapults spawning, okay, that's kind of not so good for you, but the catapults are weak early game. They also like spill XP towards you, so it's actually kind of good that they do it. And then on top of that, why would you worry about losing a fort if it doesn't really snowball the enemy into higher XP? So before, you were always worried a lot about like being on the same talent tier for an objective, or for the defense at least, because then you would defend the objective and try to re-engage the enemy team on the same talent tier. Now it's like, well, if I'm behind in talents already, why would I engage on the objective or after the objective? Because I don't need to defend it necessarily, because the enemy doesn't really get XP from it, but I do need to be in all 3 lanes, because if I don't soak the minion XP, it's basically the only meaningful XP that I get. I also see an issue in being behind a lot, and I mean that will just happen because sometimes your composition doesn't work or whatever. And then where do you get the XP back? Normally, what will happen if you're like 2-3 levels behind is that the enemy team will take all the map objectives. They will take all the mercenary camps, they will take all the objectives, and then you have like a good team fight, or you just surprise them or whatever, and you kill all of them. Let's say, again, 3-lane map, Volskaya, they had the tree glove, but you managed to defend your core, and now it's like you're 18 and they're like 20, right? So where do you get your XP from? Because the only positive XP that you get is from minions. So you would need to split up on all 3 lanes and soak minions, and then you get a little bit of XP from the towers, but there's no reward anymore from having the forts still being up and getting a lot of XP coming from that. So I feel like there's still going to be issues with that. That being said, maybe we don't actually will ever see 2-3 level leads anymore. Maybe it's only always having to have like one level or half a level. So then my concern would not be there anymore, because the big issue that people have in Heroes of the Storm and why games snowball often is that they just engage into enemy teams with a talent tier down. That's in 90% of the cases the problem. Why people lose games is that they have to engage, or they just do engage into enemies by having no heroics or having a talent tier disadvantage. So maybe these changes will make it happen that this will never be the case, but I actually just doubt it, because it's a MOBA, things happen, and that's kind of the way that you should also reward good play. Like if the enemy team is really good and they just win everything, they should be up 2-3 levels. Like there's no reason for me to say like, well, they killed us all the time, they took all the mercenaries, they took all the map objectives, but hey, we're only half a level behind. That wouldn't make sense to me, because then why would you ever need to play well in the early game? You just would always go for late game. And that's the last one I want to bring up. These changes also sound for me that a lot of the games are supposed to go late game, and I don't like that necessarily. I think there's definitely places and maps where just the games should go long. Like for example, Towers of Doom is always amazing in esports, because they always, or most of the time, they last very long time, and they allow to bring in heroes that normally don't see. So in pro play, we've seen, for example, Nazeebo being played on Towers of Doom, because it's very likely that you first of all get your stacks, but you also reach level 20. So then you have a couple of these maps where this is a possibility. I do not like if all of the maps always go to like 20-25 minutes, because that means the smart thing to draft is always late game. And that's an issue, because for example, some heroes are just not good in late game anymore. Some tanks are not good in late game anymore. That means you will have a lot of meta changes towards late game heroes only, and that pushes out even further heroes that are especially good in the early game. And I don't think that's what's going to happen necessarily, but I do worry about it. So for me, I'm going to be very interested to see how this plays out, how these changes actually play, because again, this is just my opinion from the first time reading and listening to these panels on BlizzCon, but we have to play it and see how it actually will play. I'm expecting this to go the same way as it happened last year, where we had a 2-week PTR, and I hope you guys join me on the PTR and play a little bit with me on there and see how it feels, and we can give hopefully good feedback to Blizzard to see changes if they're necessary, or if this plays fantastically, have positive feedback saying like, hey, this is really cool. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought about the announcement and also my opinion. And if you feel differently, please feel free to tell me in the comments as always. Thank you very much for watching. I see you soon. I have a couple of more videos planned. So if you were looking for more gameplay, don't worry, that is coming soon as well. As always, have a good one and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.